in prison. And pertaining to the interpretation, he said, doth not interpretation belong to Qul Alahiym? In other words, when it comes to dreams, if the dream has a meaning, who else can interpret what the meaning is but the Creator himself? The same applies to his word. Keep that in mind. But he says in continuation, in verse 15, but he that is spiritual judgeth all things. Now it said the natural man don't receive the Spirit or anything of the Spirit. My apology. Not that he don't receive the Spirit. He doesn't understand things of the Spirit, which the Word is something that was given of the Spirit. Okay? So this man, the natural man, this carnal man who is disconnected from the Most High, he can't tell you what to do pertaining to that Word. He doesn't know. Keep that in mind. Now when you look at Christianity today, when I say Christianity, you can include Catholicism and every denomination professing or proclaiming to be followers of Jesus Christ. That is a Christian. Okay? I don't care what the title is or what the denomination is. If you hear the confession of Jesus Christ coming out of their mouth as who they follow, they are a Christian. And many Christians teach we are no longer under the law. Now there may be a few who teach or utilize the name Jesus Christ but still try to hold on to the Sabbath and the feast days and some of the other commands that were given to Israel. Okay? Notwithstanding, there are a few out there. But the majority of the people who utilize that name, attached to that name, is the teaching we are no longer under the law. Okay? Now, there are some Hebrew Israelites who teach that we don't have to observe the holy days since we are not in the land. But here's the question. If the enemy, the adversary, that entity that we read in Daniel chapter 25, who speaks against the Most High, wears out the saints of the Most High, thinks he's going to change times first and laws, should the saints, should Israel be observing them? Ask yourselves that question. But let's move on. The reason why we wanted to interject those passages in regard to the law being spiritual, the natural man not knowing those things, and the spiritual man being able to discern those things, is to lead us to this passage from the letter that Brother Shaul again wrote to the assembly established in Colossus. So in Colossians chapter 2 and verse 16, it states this. And this is one of those passages that many of these Christians run to when they try to teach you don't have to keep the law anymore. Not true. And we're going to see. So what I want to do, if you're following along in your Bibles, and my apologies for not encouraging everybody to do that at the outset of the teaching today. But if you look at verse 16, just take that first clause. Let no man, or some of the translations that may say, let no one. And then you take verse 17 and the last clause. Now in the last clause it says in many translations, but the body is of Mashiach. In your King James Version, what you will notice is that the term or the word is italicized, meaning that the translators inserted there. So it should be correctly read, but the body of Mashiach. Okay? So now, when it says in verse 16, let no man therefore judge you but the body of Mashiach. Let no man therefore judge you but the body of Mashiach. So the idea behind this passage here is not saying that you shouldn't keep the laws, statutes, and judgments, but it's saying, keep in mind, the Colossians were Gentiles coming into a new way of belief, family members probably trying to encourage them to return back to their pagan ways. So Brother Shaul writes to them and encourages them and said, let no man, these natural men, these carnal men who are disconnected from the Most High, don't allow them to make decisions pertaining to your walk with the Most High. If you have a question, take it to the body of Mashiach, those who are spiritual, those who can discern spiritual things. That's the thought here. Well, let's fill in the blanks now. Verse 16, let no man therefore judge you in meat or in drink or in respect of an holy day or of the new moon or of the Sabbath days, which are shadow of things to come, but the body of Mashiach. Now, the point that we want to focus on when he states that all of these things, now, we're not talking about the meat or drink tonight, we'll deal with that in a later session, or a later lesson, I should say. But when he says the holy day, the new moon, and the Sabbath days, then he refers to them as being shadow of things to come. How are the Shabbat and the holy days shadows of things to come? That's the question we have to ask ourselves. And for all of you brothers and sisters out there who don't accept or believe in the New Testament, let's take it from an Old Testament perspective. Ask yourselves this question. Why did the Most High give Shabbat? Why did the Most High give the feast days we find enumerated in Leviticus 23? Why? What do they serve? What purpose that is? What do they teach us? Okay. So now, let's go back to the fourth command, just as a reference, okay, which is the Shabbat command, which serves, as was mentioned in the first lesson, an outline for all the holy days, okay, since they are all based on a 7-day process, or a 7-day week. Now, the first observance that we find given to Israel after coming out of Mitzrayim, or Egypt, we find in Exodus chapter 12, beginning at verse 1, which reads, And Yahweh spake unto Moshe and Aharon in the land of Mitzrayim, saying, This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you. Now, once again, consider January the 1st, dead of winter. That is not the month he was referring to. Furthermore, January, as we did with the days of the week, the word January comes from or derived from the term Janus, Janus, who was a prominent figure among the Romans, possibly even a deity even. Okay? So, the actual new year begins with a renewing of life in the spring. And if you don't mind, just for a moment, let's see how even in error, truth is being brought out. This is a revelation that the Creator has shared, and I'm sure there are other brothers and sisters out here who touched on this, but shared with me, I can say, years ago, early in the faith. But if you took the months, September, October, November, December, in the first part of each of those, September is 7, October is 8, November is 9, December is 10, meaning that January and February would be the 11th and 12th month, leading to March, which within the month of March, according to the vernal equinox, it normally falls on March 21st, 22nd, around about that time, which is the beginning of spring, which testifies to the truth that the word teaches, because when you look at the first Hebrew month, according to the Hebrew or the lunar calendar, which is Abib, and we're going to see that in the scripture momentarily, the month of Abib always corresponds to March, April. Why is that? Because it's supposed to fall in the springtime. Why? Because newness of life is what indicates the beginning of the year. New life, new year. Real simple, real plain, basic, cut and dry truth. That's what we're dealing with. Ahmed, truth. And man can't touch it. We see it year after year after year. The same cycle. But there's another force and another power at work, keeping the minds blinded in darkness. Let's move on. So with the initiation of the year and the observance of the holy days, we're introduced to Pesach. Okay? Now continuing. In verse 3, Exodus 12:3 reads, Speak ye unto all the congregation of Israel, saying, in the 10th day of this month, they shall take to them every man a lamb, according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for an house. Let's move on down to the 6th verse. And ye shall keep it up until the 14th day of the same month. Now, on the 14th day of that month, now if we can just refer back to something real quick. And what we want to do, I'm going to put something back up on the board for everybody. Here we have the sun again. Here we have the moon. Here we have the earth. And of course, you know that the moon goes around the earth. Now, what you find at this point, of course, starting again with the first crescent of light, once it gets to the halfway point, you have 7 days that have passed, which is what confuses the lunar Sabbatarians. Okay? Because of the time that the moon does show its light, it is based on a series of 7. But here's the sad truth of the matter. What they don't realize is that that is only a testimony to a 7-day period, which is not based on a Roman, Julian, or Gregorian calendar. It is based on the system that the Most High established. But the problem with keeping a lunar Sabbath are the dark days of the moon, which are still days and supposed to still be counted, as we discussed. But that's not the point here. Now, what we want to do, here's the earth. And we want to show something real quick. So as the moon, during this period, the dark moon, then you have the first crescent at the beginning of the month, and then you have the cycle. But when the moon is now aligned, you have the sun, you have the earth, and you have the moon. At this point, the moon is blocking the light of the sun. And again, this part is dark. Okay? Now, once the moon changes position and in its orbit is on the other side of the earth, now you have the full light of the sun, but also you have a full moon, which normally occurs on the 14th of any Hebrew month. Okay? But he particularly says, and he particularly begins the whole idea, the whole concept of keeping annual holy days with Pesach. Okay? Up to this point in the history of Israel, they didn't keep any of this stuff. And even right now, they're still in bondage in Egypt when he's given this to them. But the idea is this. You got the fullness of the light of the sun. You got the fullness of the light of the moon. Remember, the luminaries were created to give light to the earth. The reason why, what we can compare this to, spotlight on the earth, spotlight on the earth. There's something that the Creator wants us to pay attention to that's going to take place on the 14th day of Abib, particularly. Okay? So he commences with that. So in Leviticus 23 and verse 5 states, in the 14th day of the first month at evening is Yahweh's Passover. And here's another problem that you face when you talk to a lot of people out there, especially those of the Christian persuasion. Well, that's a Jewish thing. Well, we already seen in some passages where being Jewish or Israelite or Hebrew was something that was frowned upon and people wanted to change. This is not the Jewish feast day. It is Yahweh's Pesach, his Passover. Now, the 14th of Abib, again, is the first observance given to Israel. The blood of the Pesach offering serves to protect Israel from the angel of